We've gotten word that the State Department will extend the closure of several U.S. embassies until August 10th. That is an extra precaution that the administration is taking through to the end of the Ramadan holidays. This with intel sources saying that terrorist chatter is the most specific and credible in years. The closures of 22 of our embassies and consulates stretching across North Africa and the Middle East and Central Asia. Stephen Yates is the former Deputy Assistant to the Vice President for National Security Affairs and the CEO of D.C. International Advisory. Thank you for joining us, Stephen.
Good to be with you, Heather.
All right, I want to begin with this. Senator Saxby Chambliss speaking on Meet the Press today.
There's been an awful lot of chatter out there. Chatter means conversation among terrorists about the planning that's going on, very reminiscent of what we saw pre-9/11. We didn't take heed on 9/11 in the way that we should.
Reminiscent on 9/11. Scary words for any American to hear. And on top of that, sources tell Fox News that the terrorist chatter picked up in the past 2 weeks exceeds anything witnessed in the last decade. Stephen, I found an op-ed piece that you wrote back in 2011, and you called it 9/11 changed everything. Bin Laden's death does not. Following bin Laden's death, we heard consistently Al-Qaeda is on the run. Is this an indication to you that, in fact, it is not?
Unfortunately, the Al-Qaeda that has been talked of as dead or near dead, leadership decimated, appears to be alive and well. The messages that are being sent out are talking about something big, having a major strategic impact. I think reasonable people would have no doubt that that's what they have in mind. I think when we look at basically American retreat across this tumultuous region and Islamists on the rise, it should come as no surprise that the threat level is up and we have to be vigilant now.
All right, so some intelligence officials, they are dismayed, to say the least, that the Obama administration provided so much detail on what prompted the embassy and consulate closings, and that the disclosures, they say, could end up working against us in obtaining new information. Do you think that that will be the case, and was there any other choice?
Well, there are always risks. When you're a chief executive, when you're a president, you're faced with intelligence that is specific enough to justify alarm, but not specific enough to be able to preempt or have a narrow target. You have to then go and brief members of Congress. You need to give certain warnings. There are pressures on politicians to give warnings just in case something would manifest. But every time you tell members of Congress, the press, and the public any information about a potential threat, you're also signaling things in an information age to enemies. They could maybe not have a real threat at this specific time, but they're learning that if they give a certain threat in a certain way, we'll shut down diplomatic operations across a wide range of embassies in the region. That may factor into future plans on their part. So we don't live in the luxury of perfect information, and when we have leaders communicate too much, it does give opportunities to enemies.
And what about alienating the sources providing that information?
That's a significant risk and a major cost. That's one that's been talked about a great deal in the wake of the Osama bin Laden raid, when we had that poor doctor that had helped us trace that trail, and disclosure of that information really burnt him as a source and also put his life in jeopardy. This happens every time when you're dealing with sensitive regions. Limited numbers of people could possibly know what internal Al-Qaeda deliberations are, and so talk from those sources is very risky.
So, Stephen, finally, historically, the month of August, it's been an active one for terrorist organizations. 15 years ago this week, twin U.S. embassy bombings in Kenya, Tanzania, claimed more than 200 lives, injured more than 4,000. Next month marks the first anniversary of the September 11th attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, which, of course, killed 4 Americans and the U.S. ambassador. Is this a reaction to Benghazi?
I think they're linked in the sense that there clearly is a sense in the wider world that we have switched from offense to defense in the war on terror. And Islamists sense in this era of turmoil across the broader region, they have opportunity. And so I think while we have dialed back our commitment in the broader Middle East, the threat has not gone down. It wasn't a problem with the former president. It wasn't a problem with our presence. It has to do with the nature of the ideology and its armaments spreading across this region.
All right, Stephen Yates, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Heather.